It's All Things Considered. I'm Dave Lawrence. Today we're welcoming back a returning guest. You may recall we had the band America on as guests, Dewey Bunnell and Gerry Beckley together backstage at the Blaisdell, and now we're learning about the new solo album from Gerry Beckley. It's called Carousel. Gerry on the line as our guest again. Aloha, brother. Thanks for taking some time for us.
My pleasure, Dave. How are you?
Good, man. Thank you for asking. Yourself?
Yeah, it's a good time for us. Good time for me. Thank you for asking.
When I hear the songs on this, it has a very contemporary feel. There are a few covers. When did the writing process for the originals begin?
You know what? I keep an ongoing pile of tunes that I'm always working on. Some of these things might have started as early as 15 years ago, and some are pretty current. The opening track, Tokyo, I think I cut every few years. I've got 3 or 4 versions of that until I got it how I liked it. So each one's a little different.
That in and of itself a revelation. The record has a real rocking feel to it. One of the rockers is Nature's Way from Spirit.
Well, I don't think Dewey or I will ever be accused of writer's block. We've made our name with quite a few familiar tunes that people know now, but it doesn't mean that you don't have a list of your favorites. You know, I did 3 covers on this. Nature's Way is, of course, one of them. Just been one of my favorites for a long time. And when you have a studio, I had a studio at the house. So on any given week or weekend, you think, I don't know if I have a new idea. There's always that stack of covers.
Each of the songs is not even close to how the original sounded. It has just enough to bring that sense of familiarity, yet you grow it.
That's the goal, at least.
Counted, achieved, at least in my opinion. Got some great guitar and keyboards. Very psychedelic. Is that you doing that? And if you can, talk about some of the cats playing with you on this.
I think all the guitar on the album is me. Sometimes my son Matthew will play a little bit. Some of my favorite guitarists, clearly George Harrison, I really love and emulate whenever possible. But guys like Joe Walsh and Jeff Beck, I consider were far more about the notes they chose or choose than the amount of them.
You mentioned these other cover tunes that you did. There are a total of 3 on there. Don't Let the Sun Catch You Crying, cover from your childhood, I understand, by Gerry and the Pacemakers, as well as To Each and Everyone from Gerry Rafferty. Did you realize that you covered 2 guys who both spelled their name like yours in the process?
I've had so many different comments on that. One guy said, I'm not aware of any guy named Gerry in the group Spirit. Like he thought that was the defining thing. I was only going to cut the songs by guys with Gerry with a G. When you do a solo album, first of all, just inherent in the nature of solo is that you're probably going to be singing all the tunes. If you're a singer-songwriter, there's a chance you're going to be writing them all. So that's why I try and use measured amounts of cover tunes so that the mindset is not exactly the same dude all the time. I think one of the things that both Dewey and I, and with our early departed member Dan, we had the opportunity to pass the lead vocals around. Not only did the writing styles change, but the voice that you listen to. So I try and find some ways to address those to make the whole album listenable.
Speaking of different voices, Gerry, and we're talking with Gerry Beckley from the group America about his new Carousel solo record. No Way I'm Going to Lose You. That's my favorite riff on the record.
Well, that came from a great writer named Dan Wilson. And Dan, for those who follow liner notes and stuff, will know from his great work with Adele and the Dixie Chicks. He's basically Rick Rubin's go-to guy as a collaborator.
Wow.
He was in a group called Semisonic, and he wrote Closing Time and Secret Smile, some fantastic tunes. This is something we wrote together. So there's a few covers on the album, but there's only this collab.
A couple of them reminded me of like a ballad that Oasis could have cut. Lifeline was one of those.
Lifeline is a personal story about some of my family, and so there's a bit of a deeper message there. But the approach on that song is a nod. The horns are some of my friends who play with the group Chicago. It's a nod to, Saturday in the Park. Robert Lamb is one of my closest friends, and we've worked together on and off over the years. I am and was an Oasis fan, too, so I'll take that as a nod. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I love them myself, and there were 2 songs that kind of brought the Oasis sound to light, and one of those was the title track, I guess, Carousel. Piano on there, and the Carousel one got me thinking about you stepping away from the record and into your own life. Piano by the age of 3. Can you explain how something like that happens?
I was very fortunate. It only came about because my dad and mom, my dad was in the U.S. Air Force. We moved from Texas, where I was born, when I was about 2, and we moved to a suburb of London called Kenton. The furnished house that we rented, because when you're in the service, very often you're only there a year to 2, it had a piano. And so I just kind of found it, and, what's this? And started banging around on it. And my mom had the foresight to say, I think the kid's keen, and got me started with lessons. And so I took lessons from like 3 to 10, I think. By the time I was 10, I could read anything in front of me, but I much preferred to just listen and interpret. And come 10, I switched to guitar because the Kingston Trio, and then shortly after that, the Beach Boys.
How do you at 10 meet a bunch of other kids who can play well enough that you can form your own band, the Vanguards, doing a surf rock sound in Virginia?
Yeah, when you grow up in the service, because you move, there are certain elements of your life, for example, lifetime friends, very rare to have things like that, a hometown. And I found that people become one of two sorts when you grow up in the service. First of all, you don't know any different. So it's not like you're continually bemoaning this life that you've inherited. You don't know any different. You've always traveled. So I don't want people thinking it's negative in that way. But when you do learn to move on, you get pretty good at saying goodbye and on the other side, getting to know people. And so I think one of the things that I used as an extension of my own self was this connection of music. And so if ever you got to a town, I would look up who's in a band and who are the musicians. And it wasn't long before I was in a band virtually everywhere that we were stationed.
A lot of insight into the life of a child of military personnel. And
in Hawaii, there are so many people who know that story inside and out because of all the bases and the rich history of the services there in the islands. I can tell you another thing is growing up in that environment, the ability to travel, which you really didn't have any choice. You're traveling with your family anyway, but the worldview that you get and just the perspective that is imposed upon you, whether you want it or not. You know, I grew up in England, and Dewey, I think, was actually born in England. But Dan, our original third member, he lived in Thailand, and I was in Germany for a while. It's an immense education that you get just by opening your eyes and ears.
Well, it's funny you say that because I just recently had the privilege of spending some time in 3 different cities in Italy, and I was coming around a corner. It might have been Piazza della Signora or Piazza della Repubblica, and I hear the sounds of a horse with no name, and it's a busker in Florence, standing there, playing it, just echoing off the buildings.
Well, we love Italy. We've had a great deal of success in Italy, actually, a lot of hit records there. We had a song called Survival that was a #1 record.
Right.
Italy never really even released as a single here. So as a result, we got to go often, and as you probably know, it's just the most beautiful place.
Great sense of home, though, to have it there. It catches you really strong feeling, makes you just stop in your tracks and like, oh, I guess I'm going to stop and listen to this.
Well, I'm always honored if ever I have a circumstance like that. It's never get tired of hearing some of your music around the world.
I bet, man. Before we wrap it up, the Beatles producer George Martin got involved in your life. Can you explain how he got involved and maybe share a memorable story? And that could even be when you guys did a record in Hawaii together.
There were 5 studio albums, but he also oversaw the assembly of History, the Greatest Hits, also our first live album, which was at the Greek Theater. I group all of those 7 albums, including the Harbor album, which we did in Kauai in '77, as one kind of experience. Each album was, of course, a very different thing, different songs, actually more often than not different geography involved. But the constant of getting to work with a master like that was just, I put it as the top when people say, what's the highlight? Well, that's the singular highlight. The short version of the story is after we produced the first 3, it was becoming more and more pressure, and we thought maybe let's turn this over to somebody, free us up a little bit, because we were doing a lot of live shows and stuff. Top of the list was George, and we didn't have to go any further. Started us on a 6 or 7 album run. One of those was the incredible experience of doing the Harbor album on Kauai, where we barged over the record plant mobile unit to the Poipu side of Kauai. We rented 12 houses on the beach. It was a fantastic experience. We lived there for a few months, and I'm still, not that I don't love all the islands, but particularly fond of the Garden Isle.
Good for you, man.
Right between the beach house and Spouting Horn. That whole stretch there, if you're familiar with the Poipu side of Kauai.
Look at you, your strong relationship to the islands. It's a new record has brought Gerry Beckley from the band America back. Carousel is what it's called. When are you and Dewey coming back with the group?
It sounds like the spring. I've heard rumor of the spring, and I wish I could give you dates, but I tell you, whenever anybody asks, how come it's been so long since you've been to Scranton or wherever, I always say, look, it's not up to us. If it was up to us, we'd be playing Hawaii every month.
Make us a deal. If that gig happens, we'll get a chance to get together with you when you're in Honolulu.
My pleasure, Dave. I'd love to.
It's Gerry Beckley from the group America. Carousel is the new album, and been a real pleasure having him on All Things Considered today. Stay safe, Brother Gerry.
Thank you, Dave. Nice to talk with you, man. I wish I was there. Aloha, it's Gerry Beckley from the band America. You've heard me here on All Things Considered as a guest of my friend Dave Lawrence.